Welcome to the One Player Podcast, the show on solitaire board games. I'm Albert, and this is episode 371.
Albert, I really like the word oubliette. It's a very fun word to say, oubliette. Come, say it with
Ooh.
me, oubliette.
Ooh.
No,
Bliet.
oubliette.
Ooh. Bliet. Ooh, Julius, that's a good word.
I was feeling
doing?
sufficiently random today.
I see, but not entirely random. Just random, yeah. So Julius, today we're talking about a role-playing game again, your favorites.
I will say, you say role-playing games like I don't enjoy role-playing games. I enjoy multiplayer role-playing games, even though I haven't played one now in almost 2 decades, sadly. I do enjoy multiplayer role-playing games. It's just the idea of a solo role-playing games that I just personally can't get into, but I'm always happy to listen to these because they're inspirational and sometimes they're interesting stories. Actually, generally, if you're bringing one, they're interesting stories. There's interesting lore going on behind these. I just can't myself get over the idea of, if I'm going to do this, I want to write a book. That would be the joy for me, is I would just want to go write the book and not play the game. And that's where it is for me.
And not everybody does a lot of writing. I think that's my preferred style, or at least the way I seem to lean. But not everybody writes it. You could definitely make it much shorter. But anyway, before we do that, we have a contest to resolve, Julius.
Gasp.
You remember our contest?
It was something about some crazy person running away from some other crazy person. Usually the crazy person, at least one of them is female. And the other crazy person has usually got like knives and things.
Yes, that's right. It's a Final Girl. We're giving away the Season 3 expansions for Final Girl from Van Ryder Games. They were kindly donated by AJ Porfirio. And so the contest was, send me an email, tell me about your horror movies that you like, and you're in the contest. I got a few entries. The last one showed up yesterday, so they cut it pretty close.
I'm curious if I will have heard of any of the movies.
Oh, I'm sure you will. Yeah, actually.
I'm not sure I will. I don't think you know how few movies I watch.
Okay, so we only had 7 entries. 7 entries. First is Nicholas from Chile. His favorite movie was Nightmare on Elm Street. Used to watch it when he was young. He says grown-ups couldn't sleep well because of all the screaming going on.
Okay.
Yeah. Second
Never watched it.
Mark. His favorite was the Alien series. He's a fan of. He's a fan. Excuse me. He's a fan of the entire series. Not sure if you'd consider him horror or not. Alien Isolation is an excellent horror video game, by the way, he says. I have seen Alien. I think it's only the first one. And I will tell you what, and I think I mentioned this when people mentioned that game. I remember when it came out on HBO way back. First time it was on HBO. And there's a commercial for it that would come on every once in a while because, they would always show between the movies before there are actually any real commercials on HBO. They would show little previews of the movies to get you to watch them later on. And this one had a scene where somebody, maybe Ripley's walking down the hallway and suddenly out of an access panel on the ceiling, an alien falls out. Every single time that happened, I got scared and screamed or jumped or something. Every single time. I would watch it and I'm like, okay, it's coming. It's about to happen. Here's the corridor. They're going down the corridor and it's about to, I would jump back every time. It didn't matter how many times it happened.
Well, I've still never watched it. And the only reason I know anything about it is because of the old Disney ride that existed when I was a kid that was in Disney based on Alien.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that, right? I didn't know about that one. I saw the movie, I think it was a couple years ago when I was running on my treadmill. It was a good movie, but it's really slow for the treadmill. It's actually a lot of tense drama and slow action. So good movie, but not as adrenaline rush as one would think. Next entry was from Montana. His favorite movie was Army of Darkness. Do you know that one?
Never even heard of it.
That one it's pretty campy. He loved the mix of campy and horror. I saw it. Unfortunately, when I saw it, my father had just had a heart attack, which he survived, but he had just had a heart attack like the week before that. So my mind was not at all into this movie. So I did not enjoy it. A little bit unfair. I remember it has a Necronomicon in it. and that's about all I remember. I think the guy like travels to some alternate reality and fights zombies and stuff. I don't know. So that was number three. Also, it's a little belated, but Montana was hoping I could wish a happy birthday to his wife. So happy belated birthday. Sorry I missed the actual day, but here we are. Hopefully it's not too late. Apologies if it is. Um, Next entry, Vanessa also picked Alien. The remember seeing it when she was way too young and getting freaked out by it, but still fascinated. Yeah, I remember seeing Watership Down when I was too young, and that scarified the heck out of me. And scare I said scarified. That's funny. Um, Not a scary movie really, but or not a horror movie, but it was also great. So I get the seeing it too young, but still being fascinated because to this day, Watership Down is one of my favorite stories. Next up, Ryan, favorite horror movie, The Thing. The Thing is great. I like that one a lot. I think I still have the DVD and I'll watch it once in a while. Not super fast, but I do like that one. Nice and creepy. Next up, Chris. Chucky is his favorite movie. Never seen that one myself. I don't know anything about it. He asked if there are any expansions for Final Girl that are Chucky based. I don't think so. At least not yet. But again, I haven't played it, so I'm not sure. There is a puppet master that has some sort of puppets, so maybe it's similar to that. No idea. And finally we have Tim. He picked two. It's kind of cheaty, but that's okay. I appreciate it. The first was Halloween, and the second was Blair Witch Project. Can't go wrong with Halloween. That's a classic scary movie. Blair Witch Project is another great one.
I only know about Blair Witch Project from knowledge of it being like an innovator in holding the camera style.
Yeah. Don't spoil it for people who haven't seen it yet. It's only
I
20
haven't
years
seen
old,
it.
you know? Okay, well, don't spoil it for yourself. It's a good movie. I saw it. I don't think I saw it at the theater. I think I got the DVD, but right after it came out, and it was pretty good. I bought a DVD again a couple years ago to watch it when I'm running on my treadmill. My treadmill broke and I haven't seen it yet. So once I replace it, I will. I don't know if it'll hold up. I am curious about that one. So anyway, that's our 6, 7 entries that we have. Do you have a D7, Julius?
Uh,
Hang
somewhere,
on, he's
hold it.
getting his D7 out.
I know it's here. Will a D8 count?
D8 counts, but if you roll an 8, then I keep the games. Okay, I won't do that. We'll make him roll again.
Okay, 1 second. I know I have one here somewhere.
You want me to lend you one?
No, I got it. I'm rolling now.
Okay.
I rolled a 3.
3! Congratulations, Montana! It's going to you as a gift to you and your wife for her belated birthday, as an apology, I guess. So, all right. Thank you, everyone, for entering. And to the rest of you guys, better luck next time. I'm sorry. All right. That settles that. That is exciting. I've been wanting to do this for a while. But now, let's move on to role-playing games, Julius. Let's talk about Colossal.
Oubliette.
Ooblet. Okay, so Colossal, it's a portmanteau. I think that's the right word, isn't it? When you combine two words together,
Yes.
it is a combination of castle and colossal. So it's Colostole with STLE at the end. And basically, the premise of this game is you live in a giant, massive castle. And when I say massive, I mean it is there's cities and oceans in the castle. Yeah, but when you try, if you're wandering around and you travel, you eventually may reach a humongous wall with a doorway that may lead to a different room. If you look up high enough on a clear day, you could see the ceiling, I guess, and the rafters and whatnot. So giant, really strange, immense castle, really strange place. There's also wandering around occasionally. You come across rooks, they're called, which are basically creatures that you could fight that are like little mini castles. And if you defeat a rook, you could harvest things from it, including their gemstones, which can confer you special powers. In this game, you play a character who has a gemstone and has some power from it. So it could be there's 4 different types of characters. I don't remember all exactly, but one of them, for example, wears a helmet and he's able to do magic with it. There's some that are fighters and have really powerful weapons, like maybe a giant 500-pound sword hanging off their back from a stone arm or something like that. Just odd, or some sort of maybe a contraption, like I don't know, a castle powered bicycle that's made of stone, or a boat that's made out of stone. Very, very strange, very, unreal, but just really interesting setting. I mean that's what the game is about. And so you're an explorer, a wanderer that goes around and has
He's a
adventures.
wonder.
And maybe you're wandering around because you got kicked out of your house, or you need to accomplish a mission or whatever. That is the setting of Colossal.
And there's the city of Oubliette.
There's a Oh, there is, isn't there? That's right. I forgot.
That's why I've been saying Oubliette. It's because the central
Oubliette.
city of the whole thing is Oubliette.
That's right. I have not visited Oubliette in my games. Um, but yeah, there is a city called Oubliette in there. So, what do you get with this game? It is a RPG book. There's actually 4 books so far. Uh, I think we'll mainly focus on the main book, but we'll definitely delve into the other ones somewhat. These are large size books, sort of like Dungeons and Dragons size books, so roughly letter size pages. Not as thick as a D&D book. I think it probably has, I'm gonna guess, 128 pages for the main book. That's probably close enough. It is not very dense though, so there's not a ton of information like a D&D book would have in 128 pages. But that's just the way it is. The the book is divided into, of course, different chapters, information about making characters, talks about rooks, explains the combat and exploring and that sort of stuff. Lots of art throughout the books.
Oh,
Lots of
yeah.
Yeah, lots of nice line drawings with colors, also black and white line drawings.
The art is gorgeous.
Yes, it's really pretty art, absolutely. Starting from the cover of the main book, everything in there is just really neat and it's so surreal. Just these wandering around in this giant castle, and you could see in the distance it's kind of hazy, but you could see maybe the walls rising up and that sort of thing. Um, so that is the basic game of Colossal. It is about exploring this castle, and you've got your rulebook. It's a journaling game, so you're probably going to be writing. So I guess you don't have to. It doesn't use dice. It uses cards for combat and different roles of stuff. Whenever you got to do different randomizations. What else can I mean? There's more to say, I know, but about the rule book or about the components, nice quality. They're not that expensive. I think retail about $25 or $30 each book. You could get the PDF for about $10 if you want instead. Um, you could also buy cards. There's themed cards. There's 2 different styles of theme cards. One which has illustrations from the book, and the other one just the black and white line drawings from the book. And the other one is just a cool stylized suits. It's the normal suits, but they all look different than normal and pretty cool actually. So really nice cards. I would recommend those, especially the black deck. Then besides that, there's also 4 other decks that you could buy that you could use to give you more variety of when you're playing. They basically are decks associated with different character types that you could be, different professions. And so if you're going to play with one of the decks, you could choose which of the 4 you want to play with, and then that'll guide what you're doing as a profession. And as you're playing, you use them differently depending on the profession. And I've only used one of them, which is the cartographer. But I could talk more about that a little bit. 4 books. The main book is all you really need. The other 3 books just add on more rules, expand the world a little bit, and have a couple adventures in them. They each have adventures in them.
What do you mean by an adventure?
Adventure. I will talk more about the one I've played a little later. I definitely want to get into that. So don't let me forget. Often when we do these podcasts, we'll say things like, "Oh, we'll get back to this point," and we never do. And
Oh,
especially me, I think I'm guilty of that.
I
Honestly,
was
I
going to
don't think
say,
you do
I
it as
try
much.
not to do that. I have a list of
Yeah,
things.
I try not to do it, but I'm editing the podcast later. I'm saying, I never did get back to that point, did I? And it was really important too. Wow, I wish I'd mentioned that part. Like you can't play without knowing that factor or something like that. I'm exaggerating a little bit there, but anyway. So yeah, I do want to talk about the adventure for sure because it's different than the rest of the game. So I've told you about the component and the themes. Let's get into the rules. This game is pretty rules light. It's mostly about telling stories, and in fact, everything you're doing, including combat, is really more about the story than the dice rolling for success and or failure sort of thing. You're going to make a character. You're going to pick from about 4 different classes, and you're going to have 3 different attributes, and they're ranging from a value I think of 1 through 5. Depending on the class you pick, it'll determine what your starting stats are. They I think they have to do with combat and 2 other things. What are they, Julius? Do you remember? Combat. Well, there's a combat score and an exploration score, and I feel like there should have been a third value, but I don't see it in here offhand.
Are you wanting me to look it up and find it?
No, because you don't have the right PDF for that one. Sorry. It's okay. So there's a couple stats in there that you're gonna have when you play, and they basically range from 1 through 5. That's what matters, and it depends on the type of character you are. Again, it could be whether you're a fighter kind of character, or a person with a vehicle, or a person that does magic. You when you make your character, you're gonna draw cards throughout that process to figure a few things out about yourself, like what your motivation is. Um, there's a couple other things you figure out. It's been a while. So this has been a real busy 2 weeks for me, and I did not prepare quite as much as I wanted to. So I'm doing more looking up as I go along. I am sorry about that. You're gonna pick your calling, your nature, your class, and a weapon. And you're gonna draw cards for the calling, the nature. The nature is things like introspective or sly or happy-go-lucky, that kind of stuff. The the character's calling, it's why you're out wandering in the world. Then your traits. What are the things I said? I said, let's go back a page. Let's go back. Some of this might get edited out even. A weapon and a class. So there's, like I said, there's 4 classes. I think it's 4, and then there's a weapon that you're gonna have, and I guess it's also that's dependent upon your class.
Albert's going to listen to this later on. He's going to be like, I was rambling even more than I usually do.
And I ramble a lot, don't I? the so so you're gonna pick all this stuff out, but keep in mind it's mostly for the sake of telling a story. The details don't matter a whole lot. You don't want to spend a ton of time coming up with your weapon and all that, because it doesn't matter one whit whether you have a sword or a pistol or your or slings or a shotgun, or shotguns don't exist in neither do pistols, but whatever. Point is, it doesn't really matter.
That's always what I want to
Um,
know from my games, is that what I'm doing doesn't matter.
yeah, that when that came up, I was, oh, that's a little bit of a shame. That's annoying, but it's okay. It works out. So you've got your story and your backstory, and now you're ready to start playing. And what do you do? This is with this game.
Play
This
the
is the
game, I would
first
assume.
big wall. You're not sure what to do. I mean, so you explore, but you don't. There isn't a whole lot of setting given. You're in a world. You start somewhere. There is a town that you could play from, I guess, Oubliette, if you wanted to. But other than that, you really don't know what you're doing. Oh, and you do have your goal. So I guess you're gonna go try and accomplish your very vague goal. So I found that from the very beginning, I was very lost, and the only thing to do is just start playing. Okay, I'm gonna head south. So I guess I live by a river, and I'm gonna get on a boat and head south. And I did that, and I drew an encounter card. So now when you're playing, you draw encounter cards, and you deal with the encounter card. You basically, there's 2 things that matter: the suit and the value. And when it's the suit, that what really matters is whether it's red or black. Then you're going to look at a table, look up the number, and the right column for the suit, for the color, and that tells you the type of encounter you have. You figure that out, you write it out or whatever. And if there is a rook, you're going to have to deal with a rook, or maybe some villains, maybe some brigands or something. Maybe you find something, you describe it and write it and move on. The But let's say it's combat, because that's generally the other big part of role playing games. If it's combat and it's with a rook, you're going to draw a few cards to figure out what type of rook it is, whether it's big or medium. Medium is about the size of a car or a small house, so that's pretty big. Large is probably like a bigger building. Fortunately, I never came across any large ones; those are less common. But
Fortunately.
then when, yeah, well, yeah, fortunately. But so then you're gonna come up with a few things about it. What type of gem it has inside. I mentioned that you're playing for these Rookstones. Or the Rookstones give you power, and there's different types of Rookstones. There's 3 colors, and they each have different abilities. One is electricity and probably fire. I don't remember more. I had an electricity one. Actually, I had a rumble stone, so it would shake things, I guess. But I can counter electricity creatures. Anyway, you'll figure out what type of rook it is, and then you do combat. The way combat works is based on your combat power. You're going to draw that many cards from the deck, and then depending on the size of your opponent, you're going to draw cards one at a time for your opponent. You flip over the opponent's card, and to win the combat, you now have to play a card that's higher than your opponent's. So if you drew a jack of diamonds for your opponent, you better have a king, queen, or ace in your hand. So and then you play that and you win. If you fail to beat it, If you got lower, you take damage instead. You will keep doing this until you've drawn the number of cards based on your opponent's size, which is either 3 for a medium rook or 5 for a large rook. And if you survive the fight, then you won the fight. And that is the entire combat. So what you do is in the fight, depending on what cards got drawn and the type of rook, you get to describe what happened in the combat. You just make it all up. You could say, "Oh, he was attacking me, and it's a rook that uses fighting, so he tried to punch me, and he slammed his fist towards me, but I was able to block it with his shield and trip him up or something." So you just totally describe the combat. That's up to you, and I guess you don't have to. You can just leave that text out if you really wanted to. But in the end, whether you win or lose is just those card draws, and you're able to play high cards each time. If you take damage, that's going to lower your stats. So the next time you have an encounter, you may have fewer cards that you're drawing, unless you're able to heal up. If you win the combat, you may also gain a reward. Depending on the type of rook, you'll draw a card and see what you get. And maybe it's a rookstone, or maybe it's a piece of arm, or whatever. And then you've done your combat. It's the next day or something. Now it's time for the next encounter. So again, you draw a card and you see what you find this day. Maybe it's another rook to fight. Maybe it's not. And you will keep playing this way, doing your adventures. That is basically how the game works. Is just keep wandering around and exploring and trying to fulfill whatever your goal in life is, and finding stuff in this giant massive castle.
Whatever you've sort of arbitrarily decided is your goal.
Pretty much, yes. Like I said, I did find that a struggle at first. It was very hard to know what to do, and I just started wandering. And I started drawing cards, and I found that pretty quickly I came upon a wall, and then there was a cave, and I started exploring the caves. And it said there's cave systems, kind of, but I didn't really have any more information than that. So I just started describing some large underground cave system, and I found another room that was a tundra. So it's that room. I got to the other side. Was actually there's constantly snow and blizzards and stuff. I decided I couldn't deal with it, so I left. Explored the underworld, found like a vast underground city. This is all just stuff me making up as I go along, having no idea what I should be doing. Feeling lost, but still developing a story that I was really enjoying a lot and thinking is really cool. I wanted to see more of this place that I'm coming up with as I go along. So it's really fun, but it is a little overwhelming and frustrating as you play, I think. Unless you just got to say, I don't know what's going to go on. I'm not going to worry about it. I'll figure it out as when I get there. And I thought that worked pretty well.
I mean, that's kind of how you play. I mean, I don't, are the rules giving you any sort of insight on how to play, or not? Not even.
I mean,
those?
they tell you how to draw the encounter card and how to do the fight. What you do with any of the story of the details is totally up to you. It doesn't say, "Oh, here's," it gives you that one example city, but it's very, very brief example. There's not a whole lot of detail on it. Besides that, really come up with anything you want. Two different people are going to come up with entirely different worlds. One may be a very medieval world with knights and all that sort of stuff. Another one may be a much sparser, emptier world with just a few tiny villages throughout, and totally very different feel. Maybe one's much darker than the other, because there's very little guidance on the setting other than the fact that you're in a giant, giant, giant castle, and you don't know why this castle exists, or how far it goes, or where these rooks and rookstones come from. That's all mystery for you to just wonder about. It is most of the games I've played, I felt had a little more guidance than that, or are very much smaller in scope. This is really an open-ended game where you could, in theory, play a long story. It goes on forever. A lot of the other games that are vague like this, you tend to play until, I don't know, you've drawn, say, 20 cards, and then the game's over or something like that. And so they're very more one-shots versus a ongoing campaign kind of game. Okay, two things I wanted to get back to, right? At least two that I remember. One is the deck of cards.
I'm not taking notes for you.
Oh, neither am I. So the deck of cards, there's 4 different professions. The one I tried was a cartographer. I kind of found that one a little disappointing, because that one basically, you drew the cards to draw your map, and the cards tell you what's on each location, and then you play them out spatially however you want to arrange them. If you draw 5 cards because you explored 5 spaces, you now decide how to arrange those cards and what shows up next to each other and that sort of thing. And you build a map And the rules say when you build a map, you could then sell them in a city later on because now it's something valuable information to person. The thing is that the stuff on these cards that you encounter are the stuff that if you encounter normally with just a regular deck of cards, the only difference is you don't lay them out in an order. You're just doing them one at a time and finding what it says. But again, the things you find are exactly what's in the table as in this special deck of cards. So I found the cartographer deck a little disappointing personally. I didn't try the other ones, but the other ones seem to actually offer new things and more variety. Like for example, I think one of them you could make potions. That doesn't come up anywhere in any of the rule books. Now I don't know if they function exactly like something else, but I didn't get that impression. The rules for all the cards are online, so you could definitely check them out before you buy the decks and see what you think. They look nice, and I like them. I'm not really disappointed to have them. I just didn't find them as valuable as I thought I would have.
Because you were looking for more inspiration to play, and they weren't providing that
And
inspiration.
more variety, I think. I think, yeah, I think you're right. More inspiration and more variety in how it affected the game. I wanted to change it more. Um, I think you're right about the inspiration because I started from the beginning as a cartographer, and again, not having any sense of this world, just feeling really lost. It didn't. It was just yet one more thing to worry about. Okay, so the second thing I want to talk about is the adventures. Each of the expansions brings some kind of adventure, and I've only looked at the first adventure. The other two are, from what I understand, are different because the book tells you, don't really read this until you start playing it. And as a matter of fact, as you're playing, it says, don't turn the other page until you have finished this page. So for the first adventure in the first expansion, which is called the Roomlands, let me see. Yeah, the Roomlands. It's a specific adventure, and I thought this was interesting. I like the way it works. It was sort of like a guided choose your own adventure. I'm not going to give any of that story away, but basically it says you read the first part and it's a story and it sets it up and all that. It says now before you flip to the next page, you need to go explore a couple times. Once you've explored a couple times within the guidelines of the story, so you know what sort of area you're exploring and that sort of thing. Do your two explorations and then turn to the next page. You get to the next page, you've arrived at a location. Now it tells you, here's different things on this map. Go look at anything you want. And when you go to a different location, you read a paragraph and find out what happens there. Once once you've had your fill of that, and I'll say and found the right thing, then you could advance to the next section. So it's very much the same sort of prompts, but more guided and more focused. I thought that was probably a better way to learn the game than what I did starting randomly. So I kind of wish I'd had that from the beginning.
Was it a better way to play the game once you already know the rules, or is it just if you're learning the rules and how to play?
It was no, I think it's probably a little better as you're learning the rules, so you're not as overwhelmed with coming up with a complete world and story on your own. This at least kind of gets a little bit of that framework taken care of for you, so you don't have to worry about it. I think that would have been better as a first step. Once you kind of got the idea of the world and you start getting a little bit of the foundation of that backstory that you're coming up with on your own, then I think it's easier to say, "Oh, this is really interesting. I kind of want to know more about this place, and I want to head east now because the story's getting interesting over there, or whatever." And it kind of gives you it holds your hand basically until you're ready. Is what I felt like it did. So I thought that was interesting. Um, it was very much a choose your own adventure kind of thing. I thought in a way, I mean, that you're reading and then doing your stuff and then turning the page. So it's kind of guided. I thought that was actually a pretty interesting way to do a solo RPG. None of the ones I've come across before do that, where it guides you through a story that in that much detail, right? In that much narration, I think ahead of time.
I mean, it sounds like it's inspired by campaign books from multiplayer RPGs where they also have this idea of a whole story that Dungeon Master or the role playing guide or whatever it
Hmm.
is leads you through that story. Just here,
Yeah.
there's a story that you're dealing
So
with
so it is similar to that, right? But
yourself.
in those, if you're the DM, you're going to read the entire thing first, and now you know where all the characters are, and the players are free to do anything, right? You set up the introduction, and oh, you're wandering around, and you come across this broken down wagon. What do you do? And you could loot the wagon, or you could try and help the people that are still there, or you could ignore it and move on. And the players could decide entirely here. It says, it's more specific. It basically says do these things, and once you've done those things, then move on to the next chapter. You don't have the liberty to change it as much. You can't just choose to ignore it or fight him when you're supposed to rescue him. Yeah, it doesn't give you that much leeway. So it's very much holding your hands, and you have to do that because unless you're going to read ahead through the whole thing, you have to keep taking small steps. Otherwise, you're just going to ruin it, right? Potentially ruin it by making a room that it can't account for in such a small space. I think that's a pretty neat idea for other solo games. I would like to see that, even like the small one shot games, or maybe use the deck to go through 4 encounters, and once you've done those 4, it now sets the next scene for you, and use a few cards for that encounter. I'd like to see more games like that. I thought that was pretty cool. I also liked
More like
that
a
with
choose your own adventure.
more like a choose your own adventure, but still very open ended. Then you're free to fill in all the details yourself of how you do it. Which it probably sounds a little backwards about what I said before, but it isn't. Trust me.
I would
the
never accuse Albert of being backwards.
no. The what was I gonna say about the adventure? Yeah, no, I thought that was a really neat idea. I like that a lot. The other 2 books also each have adventures, and they're entirely different settings. One of them is called Kondinia or something like that, and it's sort of an Asian inspired setting with temples and stuff. And this seems to also have a guided adventure, but it's different and it's more of a campaign. So you'll play, and eventually you discover a temple or something, and you could do stuff with that, interact it, and move on somewhere else. But it seems like it's more bigger. And again, it says you really
More
don't
bigger.
want to more. Yeah, I don't know what to say. You you don't want to
Your wife is a
read.
teacher, right?
No. She
Oh,
works in
okay.
theater, so
She
if it's dramatic, that's
she
fine.
won't accuse you of saying things like more bigger.
Oh no, language is a fluid thing. Language is meant to change and evolve. So when I say things like that, I'm progressing the English language. You see, that's how we get where we are today. Anyway, these are different. One thing in the book, it says you don't really want to read everything ahead of time. You kind of wait until you've unlocked that, and then read the next sections. So I really haven't dug into the other 2 books as much, other than I kind of used the last one as the Dungeon Lands ones to find out a little bit about the underworld, because I was playing, and like I mentioned, I was exploring underneath, and I really had no idea what it's supposed to be like or any of that, and I was feeling really confused. So I kind of read through that some to get more of a sense of what it's like. But I haven't read any of the adventure part. If I did, I missed it. And the books seem to build upon each other, actually. I have noticed, because as I was reading this one in the adventure here, it alluded to future stuff that you wouldn't know yet until you get the next books. So that being said, I think if you're getting this game, you definitely need the rule book. You might want to get the first book also to do that adventure, and then
Albert has been spoiled by choose your own adventures and now just
and
wants to read a book.
yeah. See, I wish games you just read them and that's all you had to do is just read the game and you're done, right? That makes no sense. No.
I mean, I almost feel like you're supporting my argument for this whole thing.
What I was tongue in cheek though. But yeah, so I did find that this game for me had a lot more writing and a lot fewer random events. I don't know if it was because I was just enjoying the setting so much or what, but I would write a few pages and then draw another card, and then write again a few pages, and it was just like most games you're drawing a card more often and writing less. And maybe it's because I've been playing these games and I'm getting better at writing. Maybe, probably not. More likely, I think it was again the vagueness of the rules and the lack of direction. I would just write more before I found a point where I felt like, oh yeah, now I need to do something again. More filling in. Like to get to the adventure is set on an island, so I had to get to that island, and I was not anywhere near an island, so it took me a while to guide the story that way because I didn't feel comfortable just jumping and saying, like in D&D, oh, that was a great adventure. Next time we play, you'll start at a tavern, right? That kind of disconnect I don't enjoy as much. So I had to guide it to the spot. So that is Colossal. Really unique setting. That's the big thing about this. Neat
Sounds
game.
huge.
Yeah. Thank you, Julius. Any other questions besides that you're closing there? I'm gonna just give you a chance.
No. I
Okay.
mean, other than just my comments of I feel like you've been spoiled and ruined on RPGs, and now you just want to choose your own adventures from now and ever again.
This was definitely not a choose your own adventure. It was the opposite. But yeah, it does kind of make me wish I had more guidance. You're right. All right, Colossal.
Hugely big.
Hugely, it is. Yes.
Complete with an oubliette.
There's other cities too. There's not the only city.
Yeah, but oubliette is the most fun one to say.
It is. What is the city in the main game? That has a city too. No, it doesn't. That's a lie. The cities of the Colossal. The Roomlands has a city. That's not oubliette. This one has. And I'm just dragging the show on. Parapet. The great city of Parapet.
So the balcony.
Basically, yeah. Oubliette's better. You're right.
I mean, I feel like they're just going with house themed, like an oubliette as a basement.
Yes, or the dungeon thingy in the castles, right? No
castles
are French. Yeah. It's all castle theme. Weird. Okay, Julius, this is dragged on more than long enough.
We've made it go too large. Colossal, even.
Yes, it's a colossal episode, isn't it? Just goes on and on and on.
Have a good night, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. We love feedback, so we love hearing from you. You can reach me at julius@oneplayerpodcast.com or JLBird on BGG, and Albert can be reached at albert@oneplayerpodcast.com or Fractalute on BGG. Our website is oneplayerpodcast.com with the number 1, and we're also on Twitter at oneplayerpodcast. The intro music is copyright Angus, can be found at jamendo.com. The transition music is copyright by Dan El Duce Pancaldi, whose page is at donpancaldi.com. The One Player Podcast is protected under a Creative Commons share-alike license. Thanks for listening.